How did you get involved in writing about baseball?
I have as you might expect, I've always had a lifelong obsession with it, specifically with the Mets since I was about 5 years old. Had always been interested in the history of baseball around since then, and had my dad had all these old books, old videos, specifically of the Mets, and it kind of carried on from there. I would go to in high school I would go to journalism class and worked on the student newspaper, and then in college was a communication major and worked on the student newspaper. And even as I kind of went into my career, which wasn't totally sports related, I always wanted to still keep my toe in the water, so to speak, and write in sports. And I've written for several websites, and you had mentioned other things that I had done, with Saber, and I always wanted to kind of have some kind of involvement in doing sports, even if it might not be a career. So as I was writing for some publications, I did a lot of, list writing and kind of, top 10 lists. And that's what partially inspired me to do that Mets and Tens book with Arcadia Publishing and the History Press. So that kind of was the foundation for starting that book, which came out about 2 years ago. And my involvement with Saber allowed me to kind of oversee that Metrospectives book, and carried on from there. And the editor, main acquisition editor at Lions Press saw specifically Mets and Tens, wanted to see if I would be interested in doing this book of the all-time All-Stars. They've also done books on the Yankees, which came out last August, and the Pirates, which also came out yesterday. So I was happy to do it. It was a tough process because it was writing the book in a short period of time. I think I would rather had a few more months, but to do it in about less than a year was a lot of work. But it was a subject matter that I was fully aware of. I think it had it been another team, it would not take me. I wouldn't have done it that quickly.
When you wrote your first book, anybody who's listening out there who wants to write a book, that's not just an easy task when you just wake up one day and you want to write a book.
Mhm.
Could you explain that process to everybody?
Yeah, it requires a lot of patience and diligence. When people ask me if like, oh, you must be such a great writer, and I'm trying to remember what it is, and I've said this in other interviews. I was watching those masterclass things. You get them, they spam your Facebook and your social media. I was watching one of them, and I believe it was Margaret Atwood who did Handmaid's Tale. I think it was her. I don't want to totally say it was her, but she said something. It was definitely a woman. Said something to the effect of, "I'm not a great writer. I'm a great rewriter." And I would say not a good writer. I think I'm a good rewriter. What I mean by that is my advice to anyone who wants to do a book or wants to write something long form is to have a long-term plan and to make sure that plan includes writing every day if you can, whether it's writing 500 words, 1,000 words. If you don't have a lot of time, write 200 words. Just write something down. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have your perfect sentence, your perfect paragraph right away. I am certainly an example of that. I write something down. I have an idea. I say, if it's the Mike Piazza chapter, I want to write about, hey, how he, the trade that brought him to New York. That's how I want to intro it. And I put something down, and I eventually look at it again and go, this stinks. I got to correct it. And then I might look at it later and say, well, I got to correct it again. So it's a lot of repetition. As I said, trying to write every day and making sure you have that long-term plan and sticking to that plan. Probably the most difficult part is sticking to that plan, because if you skip a day, then it's a week, then it's a month, and then you miss the deadline that the publisher gives you. So my main piece of advice is to write every day and to not always search for that perfect sentence or paragraph, because you're never going to find it the first time.
And even when the book is written, so your job's not done. Like today, you're doing interviews, and I saw you on a couple of other podcasts. And what else are you required to do after you write that book, or is good?
Yeah, well, publishers, as many people might know, they're not exactly lucrative. So the resources they may have for a writer to promote their book is a little bit limited, and I think that's something that I've understood, especially after the first book. And so a lot is required of you to promote your own book, and I happily take that on because I like to be in control of a lot of things. So although it's difficult, but there's also a lot of fun in it. There's a lot of fun in people saying, "Hey, I really like I read the book, and hey, I really like we can converse about it." And people can say, "Hey, maybe this position, I thought this should have been different." But hey, I really liked it. I enjoy that because I don't expect what I write to be agreed upon by everyone. That's otherwise it'd be a really boring book. So yeah, I enjoy the promotional part of it. It's tough. It's a little bit stressful. Sometimes you arrange interviews and you realize you just kind of put two on top of each other, and it's hard to be kind of a writer and also a scheduler at the same time. So it's I guess this is the most enjoyable part, is talking about your work and seeing how many people want to talk about it with you.
Cool. And we're at a great time of the year. So the Mets are in spring training. Baseball's about to start.